Hello and welcome to Changing Shapes in our segment Wish I Thought of That. Hi Hiba, how you doing? How have you been?
Hi. You know what? I'm good. I'm okay. I'm net positive. There's a lot going on, but we're hanging in there. It's a Monday. It's a good Monday. Busy Monday. Let's keep it real. We keep it real on Wish I Thought of That. We don't, how are you
Ha-
doing?
Happy Monday. I'm okay. I'm
Happy
okay.
Monday.
While last night was a little bit sleepless, we did have a fun thing last week. So it was Halloween, which
Yeah.
is since I was a kid in Germany, it's gotten a lot more popular. So people are
Yeah.
actually doing trick or treating, setting up their houses and everything.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
this year was the first year we went trick or treating with our
Mm,
son, which was
mm.
really interesting, both from the perspective of him learning to be brave and ringing the doorbell at
Yeah.
neighbors and seeing what people
Yeah.
say. And, you have to say
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
So, you have to
Yeah.
kind of be brave but realize that actually people around us are really nice.
Yeah.
And it was also
Yeah.
interesting for me to meet some of the neighbors that, like, thanks to
Cool.
the dogs, we've met most of them, but there's a lot that we haven't met. And you find yourself walking around and see, oh, hey, here's another person who put in some effort, at least a jack-o'-lantern or a haunted house.
Sure.
And,
Sure.
they're inviting us to ring the doorbell. So it was really nice
Mm,
to get to know people, at least briefly. So
true.
that was, yeah, quite exciting, which is, I think, is an interesting connection to what you've prepared for us today.
That's cute. I like that.
Yeah, it was
Um,
really fun.
Yeah. Okay. So yes, I guess it does tie into what I wanted to talk about today, and it's something which has been on my mind for a couple of months now, and it's been interestingly enough percolating alongside all of the AI developments that have been coming to all of our apps and products, right? So I read a really interesting quote, which I'm not going to try to attribute it to them just now because I'm going to get it wrong, but I'll paraphrase the idea for you. Um, it's this idea that when we as people, as consumers, detect that something has been made with AI or something was not fully created with the person's time and expertise, we sense it to be something that's artificial and that we then tend to value it less. That sounds really obvious, right? Once I say it, but when I read it, it made me kind of think about how interesting it is that so many products and companies are leading with we are AI forward and AI is going to make your life so much easier, and how much they were embracing that messaging whilst also as people probably feeling what I just described, that when something feels artificial or when somebody detects that AI was used in it in the making of the solution, that you automatically value it less. I don't know about you, but I know that to be quite true for me. It's really unfortunate because when I can also sense or tell that somebody used ChatGPT or Claude and whatever it is that they're doing, not so much Claude actually. That's a side note. But anyways, I can tell when somebody's used ChatGPT specifically. It doesn't dilute what they did for me, but it changes my relationship to the thing. Okay. So I've been curious about this feeling of artificiality that comes to mind. And then alongside this, so kind of seemingly unrelated, but in preparation for our chat today, or in thinking about what I wanted to talk about today, I wanted to bring together this other experience I've been having with this app called Village. Now, Village is a platform where you can basically learn how to maintain connections and relationships with the people that you care about the most. And not only does it help you stay connected with the person, it teaches you how to put in the effort of maintaining your relationships with your village. The positioning is beautiful. Like, it's perfect name for for an app of this nature. But I can't quite categorize it for you. I can't tell you that this is a community tech. I can't say that this is for mental health. I can't say that it's purely social. It's a little bit of everything. And I started using it honestly as a way to kind of test out the product and give the founder some feedback. But I found myself becoming a really like a power user of this app. And again, it's ultra simple. I'll just quickly run you through how it works. So once you join, the key thing is to invite one other person into your village as soon as possible. But then you can either share things with the app itself, only the app. You can share things with your village, or you can share things with specific people in your village. And the
Mm.
way that this works is that there is an AI component to this. The AI will be summarizing and synthesizing how your week has been, how your month has been to yourself. And it tries to give you suggestions for things to do with your feelings, which I don't think I've ever really used, to be honest. But the magic came when other people in my village were getting more emotional cues around how I was feeling. So I didn't have this burden or this self censorship or editing of myself to try to explain in perfect terms that I'm not feeling great. I'm not feeling stable. But the app found a really great way of cueing the other person to be like, Hiba needs a call. Hiba
Mm.
needs a walk. Go be a friend to Hiba, and vice versa. And I found over the last couple of months with the specific people that I've had in my village that both myself and them have done a better job of being there for each other, and in a way that just felt very practical and very timely and very needed. So I talked about things feeling artificial. Talked about this experience I'm having with Village. And when I put all of this together, it made me kind of ask myself, with Village, why doesn't it feel artificial? And I think that the answer is something to do with emotional intelligence. I think the beauty of Village, as simple of an experience as it is that it detects what I'm feeling. It helps me put it into words, and then it helps me do something with those feelings, or it helps the people in my village do something with those feelings. That's a pretty difficult thing for an app to do, in my opinion. I haven't actually experienced another platform that has nailed this quite so well. It's a little rough around the edges, but the core premise is really strong. And the last thing I would say is that the level of emotional resonance that I have with a tool that it leverages the power of AI really, really strongly. Um, it's truly quite curious for me, and it has given me a different lens with which to look at other apps and platforms out there. Not every platform and app out there is trying to solve the same problems. I recognize that. But there's something around just generally, how does using a piece of software make you feel? Of course, in user experience design, this is a big question we ask ourselves all the time. But I don't think it goes quite deep enough. But now that we're in the space of AI and the technology starts to feel more personalized and more human like and uncanny and all of this, I think this is the right time to start talking about emotional intelligence in apps. So that's what's been swirling around in my brain. And I'm curious if you've had similar-ish experiences with any products you've been using recently. It doesn't have to be fully digital, but do you kind of get what I mean in terms of this heightened emotional resonance when you're using a tool?
I'm just going to put a pin in your question because I want to ask more about Village because I don't
Hmm.
know it. So you say that and I think it's interesting because for me, I feel generally, culturally, since the pandemic, we've kind of unlearned how to be together. And,
Mm,
that could be maybe not amongst our closest friends, but the sort of next circles outside of our
yeah.
closest friends. I think
Hmm.
I talk to people in retail. I love talking to people in retail and just getting
Hmm.
really hearing how they're doing.
Hmm.
Everybody I speak to, everybody says the same thing. In the last year since the pandemic, people's behavior, their jobs have gotten harder because people have gotten harsher. And I think,
Yeah.
the pandemic and the lockdowns made us really unlearn that. I think
Yeah.
social media stepped into that void, and the way we behave in social media and what we get rewarded for is completely different to what we get rewarded for in real life. And I think the
Hmm.
economic scarcity that a lot of people are going through emphasizes that as well. If your life is
Yeah.
harder, then it'll harden you as well. So I think a tool
Hmm.
like this, and I love the naming, I love calling an app
Yeah.
that does this Village. I
It's
think that's
perfect.
absolutely perfect. But
Yeah.
I was wondering about it. So when you're saying it helps you formulate your reflections, and also it helps people reach out to you or you to people, who's driving that? Are you saying, yes, tell my village to call me, or is it saying sort of for you, is it saying to others that Hiba might need a call?
The latter. The latter.
Right.
So it's on you to share. And so it nudges you daily to share. And look, one does not always want to share every day. So you don't have to. But I think the point is when you do show up to share, you have to be very vulnerable for this to
Mm,
work. You have to be very honest. And of course, yeah, from a technical standpoint, the more you share, the better the cues, the better the nudges to people, da da da. But as a user, I'm not trying to make the app's life easier, but it does involve a real vulnerability. And an observation I made that the hardest part of this experience is inviting people to witness your vulnerability
mm-hmm,
in this app. It's
mm-hmm,
not for everyone. Like, as in, it's not for not everyone will feel comfortable in this process, but B, you don't want everyone to be in your village. And I think that that type of exclusion is a good thing because you're not trying to people please and have all sorts of folks in there that maybe you don't have connection with. That said, they are introducing new features like groups and such. So, you could differentiate a little bit and have your professional village and your personal village. And then it becomes not just about feelings, right? It becomes like Hiba needs help with her, I don't know, with her Bürgeramt paperwork. Can you help her? Kind of thing. Like
yeah. Don't
who
we all?
knows? But like a village, it's not just about feelings. It ends up also becoming about that safe space where you can just ask for help and whatnot.
Yeah.
But the point being the vulnerability is key, and it becomes hard to decide who you want to witness that. And then once you do decide that, getting somebody to download yet another app, right? Because we're
Yeah.
connected through WhatsApp, we're connected through Instagram, we're connected through whatever it is. I don't know how to tell you, like the Instagram is no longer a social place.
Yeah.
WhatsApp is where we do work also. It's just different. And what Village is to me is like what Instagram maybe used to be 10 years
Yeah.
ago. It's what one's Facebook wall used to be, but much more private. And to your point about COVID, like I really think so let's bring that in as another variable. So we have this people growing more and more isolated and distant. We have all of this AI replacing you, doing all your work for you, handling all of your sales calls, so on. So you have all of these variables put together, and then you have this like really still place on the internet, which I think is really trying to nail what emotional intelligence in technology should look like, and it's helping
Mm,
you feel seen, really seen and witnessed in terms of like this desire for deeper connection.
mm.
And I guess that's the question or the lens with which I want to look at more and more, especially AI forward technology. Is this technology meeting me where I am at? Is it reading my emotional and social cues well? Because that's when I think you're leveraging AI really well and in a clever way in your
And
product.
this is the thing that I found interesting about Village is it training wheels or is it a balance bike? And by that I
Hmm.
mean, so learning, I think one of the best inventions for kids since we grew up are balance
Yeah.
bikes. I wish I had one
Yeah.
because training wheels make the hardest bit about learning how to ride a bike, they take that part away for you to actually train. The hardest bit about
Okay.
learning to ride a bike is to actually balance on two wheels. So
Sure.
that's the
Yeah.
bit that I should
Yeah.
be practicing. Everything
Yeah.
else, pedaling, steering, I can train that
Yeah.
on other toys as well, right?
True.
But
True.
balance bikes actually understood, well, the hardest thing is to manage your balance. So why not do it so
Yeah.
that you have both feet on the ground and you start
Yeah.
off taking one step at a time and then you lift your feet for a little bit and longer and longer. So you're practicing the hardest
Totally.
part is the balancing. And
Totally.
then once you've gotten that down, then stepping over to pedals is super easy. So that's why our son learned how to ride a bike with pedals on his third birthday when he got a bike with pedals because he
Well,
just
yeah.
was
Hmm.
outside
Yeah.
and he's like, I want to figure
Yeah.
this out. It took him a few
Yeah.
tries, but then he's riding it like within, I don't know, 5 tries. And
Yeah.
I think that invention is one of the best for kids since we were kids. So I
Yeah.
wonder about this
Totally.
tool about
Yeah.
Village, which of those is it? Because I think we have unlearned certain things about, asking for a phone call, knowing when do I actually need one, knowing when to or how to ask somebody if they need one. And I think I can really see how it's really helpful and having groups where I can say, you know what, this is something where I know that this group of people, I just want to kind of give a shout out because if we lived in a village, they'd see me walking down the street. It's like, what's my mood? And they'd ask me, hey, how's it going?
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
providing that proxy is really useful. But the thing that I was wondering is if it's kind of drives, I think at the beginning, it's important for it to drive more for us to remember how to do these things, but we don't
Mm.
want to completely outsource that memory. So I wonder in the long view, what's the
Mm.
plan for AI to leave the room? What's the
Oh yeah.
plan for it to say, you know what, you can ride yourself now?
That's actually a really, really great question because in the context of this particular app, there are certain rituals that even I've developed that was initiated
Uh-huh.
by basically a nudge that I got on the app about somebody else. It initiated weekly rituals that the app has
Uh-huh.
nothing to do with now. We don't report back on the app that we are talking
Right.
regularly. We
Uh-huh.
don't get nudges from the app weekly to talk to each other. That happened one time, a handful of months ago, and now we've maintained a ritual outside of that. I have found that, and just look, this goes into like a much more emotional and personal territory, but I found that in my desire to have deeper connections with other people, that I myself needed to put in that effort with people that I care about. It's really, really easy. Like any technology that promotes, and I think you're, again, I'm coming back to your point, which is really, really appropriate, right? Any technology that creates a dependency, and we talked about this last week, instead of independence, that is on the wrong side of emotional intelligence, right? And then how a brand or a product primes somebody and prepares somebody for, we do this much and then you take it further on, that is really where I think products can get a lot smarter and people can really develop a competitive advantage. Because I feel great about having this app in my life and using it because it's not creating a dependency. I don't feel like I have to come every single day, and I don't feel like I have to keep giving it data points for it to be helpful for me. It's helpful for me just by me having brought people in. And I would say that I know that it works because I'm not sitting there prompting or prodding the people in my village to share. There is a feature called check in where when somebody's been silent too long and they're kind of like,
Mm,
going through it, where you're like,
mm.
I expect you to show up as imperfect, as sad, as difficult as it is. I want you to show up exactly like how you are. Nudge. It's giving Facebook posts, but better. Anyways, look, for the millennial in me, it's very nostalgic to use this tool. It's bringing the best parts of all of the social tools we've used, and it kind of like provides it to you in a very simple package.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I'd love to see what their success metrics are. And I think to quantify the success in offline metrics would be super important because I think
Mm.
if the metrics are the classic engagement in the app and time spent in the app, I don't think that's a measurement for success. And I think here
No.
with an app like Village, which aligns with, I would like to see Village align their goals, their success metrics with mine or the people's metrics for
Yeah.
success. And I think
Yeah.
if they have their metrics in real world touch points, so, is it more calls? Is it more dinners? Is it more people brought into my village? Then I think it's winning. And so I think the feature you mentioned of reaching out to somebody we haven't spoken to, that's a nice one that we're both aligned because obviously for me to continue using Village, having features that remind me, oh, I haven't heard from this person in a while. And we're all, we're
Yeah.
busy. It might be easy to just lose track of time. It might feel like it's been a few days and it's actually been weeks. So having tools that align with the zeitgeist of everybody saying
Yeah.
time's flying by, we're
Yeah.
not being together anymore.
Yeah.
That's what I would find interesting, what their long-term metrics are, and using AI to facilitate real human behavior in real life, even if it's
Yeah.
just a phone call. That's
Yeah.
the bit where I find interesting, where it's not where AI is, it doesn't have that ick of, oh, this is, an AI created image or text. I don't like it. This is
Yeah.
actually AI being
Yeah.
in service of our real life connection, and it can then
Yeah.
kind of step back and
Mm.
let me be real.
Totally. I think that's a great question. How do you measure the impact and success of an app like this without me, the user, being like, one phone call made this week, two phone calls
Yeah.
made this month, right? Because that's how we would have thought about collecting, measuring the impact of this kind of product. So here's the
Yeah.
thing that's really interesting with Village, right? You are meant to be posting and sharing with your village, and invariably, what happens is you don't just share what's going on right now. You're like, you know what? You want to share that such and such showed up for you. like a great
Hmm.
friend. Such and such gave you a call last week. So you're already getting data points
Hmm.
from people's posts. And this is where the nudges and what you're nudged to share is really important, right? So the nudges are not static. The nudges
Hmm.
grow and they learn along with what you're
Hmm.
posting. Are you still feeling really down from last
Hmm.
week? You know what? I was, but then my friend really showed up for me and that made me feel better. So we are now in the age era where you can infer IRL interactions through content like this. It's not just a form or feedback form that you have to be filling in. So I would say that that's the first thing. The second thing is I've spoken with Guilin about this a few times, but the question I asked was, how many people do you need in your village for it to start feeling useful? So because the question was like, how do I know when I'm done? Am I villaging right if I only have two people? Because that was what my village looked like for a really long time.
Hmm.
And it's not much bigger now, mind you, but I don't feel like it needs to be also. But the point is that it should work with only one other person, right? So it is about measuring the impact of the group. So it's how many check-ins have been sent, how many posts have been made to the whole village, how many, like tracking the person's mood. Is the mood trending up? How many times does a personalized nudge that somebody in my village gets about me, how many times is that clicked? Because that means that person actioned that nudge. There's so many more intelligent ways to measure how well this product is doing. It's not about time spent on the app. That's very 2015. It's not about time spent on the app. But Nick Turley from ChatGPT says the exact same thing. They're not trying to have users on ChatGPT every single day. They're trying to get people to get value and to get out of there, right? So if the big players are already thinking that way, then we should all be kind of like taking a note about that. That it's really these old school metrics of like how many clicks are people making, daily active users, weekly active users, monthly active users, nothing to do with loyalty because you can power use something for 3 weeks and then move on to something else because it connects with you much more on a cultural and emotional level. So it's
Hmm.
a great question and it's something I'm thinking about and trying to bring into my daily work even now. And I can tell you like it's taking me for a spin myself because I'm like, instinct is exactly as you said, like, okay, but how do we measure if this thing is working or not? How do we tell that story? And this is where brand and marketing really comes in clutch. Again, I say that, and a lot of people maybe listening might be like, oh, like, duh. But for me as a product person, I'm like, I feel like I have to unlearn a lot of things and look at it a bit differently.
Absolutely. And it is what you measure is what you focus on for success, right? So to answer your very first question, so bringing this back full circle, emotionally intelligent apps just that are out there, I think there's three levels to types of emotionally intelligent apps. I think there's
Mm,
the emotionally adaptive design. I think there's state responsive apps and there's contextually
mm,
aware design. So to give that a bit
mm,
more context, what I mean by that, emotionally adaptive design is mostly what you're talking about here. So those could be, we're actually building a similar product that responds to different inputs that people make and that can then understand both how to respond to their inputs as well as what context they're in and how things have been evolving. And we're using AI for that. I think there's also AI therapy apps like Wobot, which
mhm.
there's concerns and thoughts around how
Yeah.
those are working and making sure that they're safe, but also there's a huge gap for people who could do with at least some light version of therapy, and having something arguably could be better
Yeah.
than having nothing at all, considering if we get the safety measures in place. And I think that the apps that are focused on that specifically do that better than sort
Mhm.
of character apps and things like that, which are
Mhm.
hugely
Mhm.
problematic. I think then the state responsive apps are more proactive. So by that I'm thinking of things that understand your mindset, and
Mhm.
they know what state you're in when you enter them or when they give you a nudge to maybe come in. So those are things like Apple Fitness Plus for me. If it notices that
Mhm.
I'm doing some kind of a workout and I didn't switch it on, it says, hey, are you doing a workout? And it
Sure.
kind of
Sure. Sure.
can see that. Or, Duolingo, which, if you haven't checked in, it's like, hey, I'm sad, come back and,
Yeah.
work on your language skills. I think for us as well, the 5 Minute Journal app does that, where we have reminders for people to come in and do their gratitude journaling. And we also have, we put in the work to make sure that we have trackers and reviews going back to see how you've been progressing since you started using the app, and what kind of patterns can you
Yeah.
identify within the journal that you've been using. And
Mhm.
contextually aware design is really about the ones that completely go, okay, I've opened this to do something. So it could be, working in the mental health space, headspace, and the waking up apps. I'm going into them because I'm expecting to see a meditation, or I'm feeling a certain way and I'm
Mm.
looking for
Mhm.
a meditation
Mm.
to kind of help me feel slightly
Mm.
differently.
Mhm.
But I think
Mhm.
for me, and this is, this stuff still gets me super excited, even though it's not as cutting edge, but apps like N26 or Wise that are
Mhm.
banking apps. But I do think the designers have put their high emotional intelligence into designing them, because
Yeah.
I literally, every time I'm in Wise, which is regularly, I love the fact that if I'm doing a balance transfer in between currencies, that in that UI, I immediately see how many euros do I have. And if I
Yeah.
click that amount, it takes the full
Yeah.
amount as the one for me to input. I don't have to copy,
Yeah. Yeah.
number for number. It's a
Yeah.
small thing, but if you're doing
Yeah.
this kind of work regularly, it's just there. And somebody
It's
knows I'm in this context. What am I going to want? And
exactly.
you know, it's not the sexy new AI thing, but it is a brilliant designer who was thinking about
100%.
the logical things I'm wanting there.
Yeah.
And other
Yeah.
things, and then I compare that with some German banks that I won't name, where I don't even have the opportunity to download a year's worth of Excel sheets because they want more money for that. Where I'm like, well, I see that you're trying to make money, but this feels like somebody who has zero emotional intelligence behind the till,
Yeah.
who's making my life a pain for no reason.
Yeah.
But then other ones are, things like even for me, I love the way Apple Photos works and how it brings
Mhm.
up memories. So if I'm going into, I want to be a little bit nostalgic, I open it and it gives me, over the last so many years, it just gives me some
Mhm.
suggestions. So those are kind of, for me, the three tiers of emotionally intelligent apps that
Yeah.
I would think of that work for me, and that give me a smile because I can see either someone or maybe AI. I haven't found an AI app yet where I've had the same resonance as you have, but I haven't tested Village yet. But I'm interested
Yeah.
to see how we get that balance right in that space. But the
Yeah.
state responsive and contextually aware design apps,
Totally.
I think, are they
Yeah.
make the world a better place. Even
I love that. You're totally right. It's not just about whether the app has AI or not, and that determines if you can include emotionally informed kind of design in your product, or context adaptive design, or anything along those lines. Content and micro copy is so so important. I think what came to my mind as you were speaking was accountable. Every time you are processing your invoices, and then it's just like that's another 96 that the man won't get his hands on, and you're just like, haha, yeah. And it's like it meets you right where you are at. That's a
nice.
case in point. And I think N26 and Wise do a wonderful job at that. As we're closing out, there's one phrase that I wrote down, that I'm going to borrow from Jasmine Bina, who has a fabulous Substack. I highly recommend everybody subscribe to it. It's so good when it comes to developing your sense of cultural intelligence and reading kind of just the zeitgeist, what's going on. And it's cultural, I wrote it down, cultural vacuums. We are in a cultural vacuum that has been created by all the changes that are happening with our relationship with work, with other people, with creativity. And this is why it's a great moment in time for brands and products to really lean into this, how to develop emotional resonance with users. So before you fire your best talent, before you completely outsource all of this to third party, like really investing in your UX research, really talking to your users and just checking in with how you yourself relate to this problem area, and bring in that vulnerability into the product's design or copy or content or marketing. I really think that there's something that needs to be explored or furthered upon in that space. In the case of Village, that's literally their bread and butter. They need to be good at that for that whole experience to sing. But whether we're in fintech, whether we are working on a CRM, whether we're working on a community platform, whatever it is, when I say lean into your weirdness, or lean into like really develop your sense of taste, I guess what I'm also saying is bring in these personal, emotional references, because this is what people are craving. There's a vacuums that have been created by forces that are bigger than ourselves, forces that are bigger than a lot of these companies. And the companies that show up and meet people with where they're at, these are the ones that are going to have the most traction. Here's my hot take. I don't think you need to compete with on a feature or technology level.
Mm.
Your product's only as good as the latest model that it's connected to if you are involving AI in your work or in delivering the solution. And I think that the front that you can win on and that you should be focusing on is emotional intelligence. I'd be really, really curious to see who will rise up to that challenge. I could keep going on about this because there are some really, really big players that I think are leaning into that. And I think there's some really small players that are going to be taking over some very big, taking some of the big kids' lunch because
Yeah.
they are nailing how to connect with users on this level. So it's really exciting. It's exciting, um, traversed territory that we're on. I'm optimistic about what's here for us in terms of product design over the next year or so.
I love that. I think that's a great one, and I think I'll be curious to see how do we translate that into metrics that we can measure, because only what we measure will we pursue, and I think we have to think of new creative ways on how do we measure that success.